at that point last year, the show hadn't aired, but I knew obviously the entire process. So I knew I got fired week 10. I knew it was unfair. And I can say that now because my contract has expired. I knew it was unfair. I knew that, I deserved to be in there longer. So I just felt like I had the world to prove before the show even aired. I just felt like I'm in a launch business and it's going to take over the world. And by the time the show comes out, no one's going to care, and it's just all this pressure I put on myself to just be really successful. And I'm so glad that I went to therapy because it kind of helped me conceptualize everything that was going on in my life and not just this solo event of someone saying, fired.
Welcome back to Black Incomes Creators Podcast. I'm Max, and today I'm here with Foluso Falade, and I'm going to ask her to introduce herself.
Hi, so I'm Foluso Falade. Recently, I kind of came into existence, I guess, in the public eye off the back of The Apprentice this year. So I was on The Apprentice Series 18 as one of the candidates, and I got to week 10 or 12, so that's a big win for me. Thank you very much. But that's me. That's just a little bit of who I am.
It's interesting actually because it's kind of like horror movies. Usually the black person goes first. So the fact that you lasted 10 weeks, already you're a winner. Because that's what everybody's expecting.
That is so funny. I've actually never put two and two together. In that case, I did it for the movies.
I don't know if you remember, there was this program on, I think it was ITV, and it was like celebrity skating on ice. I can't remember what it was called because, and Andy Peters from the Broom Cupboard was on it one year, and he couldn't skate, so he was starting from scratch, and he just said to the audience, "Just don't vote me off the first week. I don't want to be that black person who gets voted off in the first week," and they voted him off on the second. So it was perfect. Because he just didn't want the stigma of being.
He broke the cycle. It's fine.
Exactly.
That is brilliant.
So thank you for taking the time to come and hang out with us. I just wanted to ask, outside of The Apprentice, who are you? What did you do before that?
It's such a good question because I actually sometimes forget that I existed before any of this happened. So before that, I kind of was just the kind of person who loved to do a bit of everything. 9 to 5, I worked project management, which I just enjoyed doing, to be fair. I came straight out of uni, straight into project management. And it's just such a steady, job choice, project management. I'm a big fan of it. And then kind of just did all my other stuff on the side. So I would produce short films. I would write scripts, just anything I enjoyed doing. I planned a wedding for 400 people. Just anything that literally tickled my fancy, I would do. But I knew I loved business. I knew I loved entrepreneurship. And I knew I loved young people. And that's kind of how I ended up developing my business idea that I went on the show with. So it existed beforehand. We just didn't launch it until after the show, which is a whole thing. But so that was kind of just a bit of me. And I just love doing everything. I'm born and bred in Manchester, Moss Side, not known another life. So when you're from Moss Side, honestly, I think it's what we were saying before. It's equivalent of being from Brixton. You're just full of experience and heritage that can never be taken from you. So I think it definitely gave me an edge in terms of confidence, in terms of being able to walk into any room, which is amazing. But that's kind of just me before the show. And then me after the show has just been Apprentice, really. That's it.
It's interesting when you say about the confidence, because actually most people would assume it would be the opposite, that you're coming from a certain place and that your confidence is limited to only that place. So it's interesting that you say that sort of Moss Side gives you a confidence where you can walk into any room, because I think people would assume it's the opposite, especially for those who are a bit older, who remember sort of Moss Side in the news and a lot in the 80s. They might be like, huh? Really? Moss Side? But
yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think I kind of grew up on the back end of the Moss Side being the scary place. So I think I've moved out of my mum's house now. It's been less than a year, but we lived on Gooch Estate, which is the thick of where everything would happen, right? So growing up, I was really protected and stuff. But I think when you come from an environment that already is quite stigmatized, you almost start from a place of no one can tell me anything. I've heard it all before. Do you know what I mean? I remember being 15 and doing work experience in this particular company. I won't name them. but I was doing work experience. And they did a lot of machinery, expensive machinery work. And I told them I was from my side, and their instant response was, "Oh, let's keep you away from the expensive stuff." And they did. They actually did, very subtly. Yeah, very subtly, but they did. There were certain cupboards they actually wouldn't let me in anymore, and I couldn't believe it. Like genuinely, this was my first experience at being, profiled in any way. And I think that experience for me was like, okay, cool. Well, if I'm not going to work for you, I'm going to work for myself then. And that's fine. And that was like at 15, 16. And ever since then, I've been like, look, I'm from Marseille. There's nothing you can tell me. There's nothing I've not heard before, And I think for me, having a mum, so my mum actually has a shop in Marseille on Princess Road. It's been there for 25 years. So I've seen a businesswoman, I've seen a businesswoman develop on Princess Road in the thick of the worst areas to live in Manchester when it was still Gunchester and thrive. So I'm like, look, seen it done. I want to do it as well. And that's kind of where I built my confidence, to be honest.
That's interesting because, I mean, basically you're saying your background is on entrepreneurial business. So you've come from that, you've seen that 25, and actually for her to exist in that environment and survive, because a lot of businesses, within 2 to 3 years, it's done.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. 25. I call the business my twin brother because it gets equal attention as me. But 25 years, literally, honestly, she had twins that year. I think she was pregnant with me when she started the business. Yeah. So ever since then, as long as I've existed, it's existed. I'm a little bit older though. But all things considered, just being able to see my mom in this environment, and she loves my side. She would never live anywhere else, So I think for me, I'm just like, you can keep your expectations to yourself, It's not that bad. And if you don't want to live here, that's fine. But all things considered, it's actually developing really well, really, really well, as an area. So we're growing.
It's getting there. And tell me a little bit about the business that you're doing now. Like you said, you started before Apprentice, and it's kind of obviously it's grown since.
So before the Apprentice, I used to run, again, in my extremely creative, do anything that comes to mind phase. I used to run workshops with my best friend. So we would hire out community centers with our student finance, literally like chicken change, hire out community centers and run workshops for kids to come along and to learn about self-confidence, learn about employability skills. Bear in mind, we're in uni. We have no idea what the working world is like, but we just know that we're one step ahead from them. So we literally would just like put our money into it, work some shifts at work. It's crazy to think back, and just run workshops, just full-day workshops for young people. And we would always like have 30, 40, 50 young people attend these workshops. It was crazy. And I think I took inspiration mostly from when we would do this Apprentice Dragon's Den style activity where they have to come up with a business plan. And they all did really random, incredible things. But then at the end of the day, the notebooks get closed, and that was the end of their creativity. And I think that's kind of when the fire started like being sparked to me, that I really wanted to do something to help young people develop their entrepreneurial skills in a way that was safe and affordable. And then I kind of decided to kind of go into what that could look like, and ended up developing the business I took on the show. So it is a social enterprise at nature. And I must say it's the first ever social enterprise to get on the show in 18 years of its existence. So that's never had a social enterprise on the show before. It's a shame they didn't shout about that more. But anyway, we move. Yeah, honestly, it's like, let me just keep it stepping. But yeah, so we developed this business, or it was my business, I should say, where kids come onto our website. They do a series of educational videos, very similar to how they would do it in school, and they design a product. So they design a t-shirt, for example, with their own creative, input, whatever they want it to look like. They have their own little page on our website, and they can just sell it to family and friends. Once they make a sale, they make profit, and we manufacture it and post it. And it literally is just the setup of every other, like white labeling, I would say, company. But for kids, a safe environment for kids to make money and learn about money in the process. So that's kind of our biggest thing. And yeah, that's what I'm doing now. We're launching this month, finally. So I'm launching all this. Thank you. So that's it.
So you're launching 2024, just so that we can,
Yeah. So August 2024, we're actually launching on the 24th of August with our first workshop in person. We're going to have our first set of users using the website and launching their brands, which is really exciting. I'm very nervous, very excited, everything at once. And that was the business on the show with.
Have you maintained? Are you doing it solo, or are you still doing it with the person that you were doing it in uni?
So it was always myself. It was my best friend is there. She's always there to support, but this business was always mine. In terms of support, though, I actually work now with the Peter Jones Foundation, who are big helpers in kind of just helping the business grow and that kind of thing. So that's kind of been our corporate support to kind of get off the ground.
So is that Peter Jones from Dragon's Den, or is that Peter Jones?
Yeah. I met him like 3 weeks ago. Which is interesting.
Tall,
yeah, honestly. So tall. Oh my gosh. It was almost uncomfortable hugging him. I'm like, I think if I'm just honestly, he's just so tall but so lovely. Genuinely lovely guy. I was invited to one of his events actually with my mentor, which was really cool. So yeah, that was exciting.
I think one of the stories I like about Peter Jones, which is like, probably an old story now, is that he didn't do the university route. So he is kind of like he's sales driven, isn't he? So he did quite a few businesses. I think one went bankrupt really early on. So, and I think that's really important for people to sort of like see the unsuccessful businesses as well as the successful ones, because then actually they have that thing of like, okay, this is what I did wrong, and then they learn from it. And a lot of the time when we speak to people, they talk about the successes, but they don't really talk about failures.
The failures.
Yeah, so that's what I like about it.
Or they don't talk about the failures until the success happens. Like they don't give the full story until it's actually worked out. And it's true. There's so many businesses that fail. There's so many businesses. And that's one thing Tim from The Apprentice said to me after the show. We kept in contact. We still do it, to be fair. And he was like, "Don't be afraid to let go." He was like, "If it ever gets too much, if you ever feel like it's not for you anymore, if you ever feel like your path in life has changed," it was like the only person that sleeps and wakes up thinking about you is you. It was like everything, no one cares about what you're doing, just the lifestyle of how it looks. And I think that advice really did help me coming off the show, because obviously you get all this pressure and all this expectation. What's next? You can do it on your own. I believe in you, which is great. But at the same time, you've got a whole life behind that as well. So yeah.
Well, it's linked to what you said about, you worked with these kids in these workshops and they'd do this creative thing and then it would just stop. And it's the same thing with anything else. It's like, you go to a motivational day and it's like, woohoo. And everybody's like, yeah, I can do it. And then 3 weeks later, you've got to get yourself up in the morning and actually do the do. And it's really difficult to do the motivation. And it's like, where is that energy, etc. So I think it makes sense. So that's Tim Campbell, isn't it? The first winner.
Yeah. First winner. He's absolutely lovely guy, super sound, just really down to earth. He just gets it. So he's really lovely.
Okay, that's good. And in terms of The Apprentice itself, so I'm sure some people are going to be like, what was it really like? So talk us through sort of from applying onwards. So how was that process sort of? Yeah,
so for context, actually, I applied 2 years ago. I got into so the application stage is really long. It's about 4 or 5 stages long, really, really long process. I think I got to the 3rd stage and then I didn't get any further, which I was really happy about, because they asked me to do a special party trick. And what I did the weirdest thing, and I was like, this should not go any further. And then they called me and said, you didn't get on. I said, that's fine. Honestly, I was so embarrassed. I remember telling my sister that cannot go on TV. And then I think I realized I probably wasn't ready if I was still thinking about those little things being on TV. So I left it a year, and then I applied again, and I just was like, I prayed. I was like, God, I really want it this year. It was honestly what I really wanted to achieve. And that was last year, bear in mind. So we filmed it last year. So I applied, and really long process. Stage 1 is in this, you obviously send your application, and then they call you to this big day. Thousands of people are there, just in different time frames, loads and loads of people. And it's 6 steps, 6 stages in one day. So you get there, you wait for your group, you go in, and then you got the first step is you've got 30 seconds to pitch yourself, and the craziest one is about 30 people in the room. So everyone stands up for 30 seconds, pitch themselves. People, you can tell people, some people have been watching the show for a while, with what they were saying. It was a little embarrassing. I cringed for them. But you kind of just stand up. I think I just stood up and I just said, look, my superpower is business. Something ridiculous like that. I said, my superpower is business. My twin brother is a business. Like, that's just how I am. And then they just say, okay, number 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, come this way. Everyone else go that way. And literally, it's exit or the next floor. Yeah, that's honestly. Some people traveled hours and it was exit or the next floor. So if you go in the lift, it's a good sign. If anyone applies, if you're in the lift, that's a good sign. And then it literally goes like that. You just go to different floors in the lift. And it's very grilling. I remember one step, they actually grow your business. But I think I knew what they were playing at. But if you weren't aware, it was very overwhelming. So you walk into this room, two people sat down who actually ended up being one of the producers, one of the main producers of the show, and then one of Lord Sugar's business partners. And they literally just go in, if this isn't going to work, it's a terrible idea, no one's going to buy it. Why would you even think of this? It's stupid. Like, everything you could possibly think of, they say. And I remember saying something like, maybe your kids can afford it, but not everyone's kids can, something ridiculous that you have to really stand up for yourself. And they're like, okay, leave the room. And that's it. And then you only know you get through and they take you to the next room. Honestly, chaos. And that was the first day. So that's like a 7-hour day, literally. I would go in, be here all day, literally 7-hour day. And that's when they actually, fun fact, that's when they film, the intro videos they post before, that's when they film that at the end of that day. So when people are like, you're like spelling possible and no one can spell it, it's because they're exhausted. They've had a really long day at that point. So yeah, that's the first step.
And then how long was the whole process then in terms of like from filming? So like when you're told, okay, you're going to go on, do you have to keep it a secret? Is that one of the rules?
Yeah. So it was crazy. So from applying in January, you find out if you got on in March, and then you leave in 2 weeks, and that's it. Like, it's very quick. And you can't tell anyone. You've got a circle of trust of 3 people, you can tell. So I told my mom, my sister, and I told the COO at the company I worked for, because I wanted to get it as sabbatical. So I told those 3 people and I was going, and she approved it sabbatical, which was amazing. So literally you find out like mid to end of March, and then you leave 2 weeks. So you got to get clothes, got to get, your hair sorted. I brought like 3 wigs. 3 wigs to the show. Because I was like, I need to have backups just in case something happens. Literally, like, shopping, it's so expensive. Like, they give you £500 for clothes or something, but you don't get that till after the show's finished. So you're literally just trying to scramble around, trying to find outfits and stuff. And that's it. You're locked in the house. No phone, no technology, no nothing. Just like that. It's crazy.
And how is it? Because obviously you're all in the same spot at that point. You're all kind of like whatever. Do you feel straight away those that are going to be really competitive? And those, do you know what I mean? Do you feel that energy quite quickly? And you're like, oh, watch out for him, watch out for her.
It's honestly, that first moment is probably one of the highlights of the entire process. Because what happens is I probably shouldn't say this, I'm going to say it anyway. You arrive at the location in separate taxis. And it's like everyone goes in individually. They don't let you see anyone. You don't know anyone else. So you go into the boardroom. And the idea is that you walk in with your suitcase, you drop your business plan down. And I remember getting a glimpse of a few other people and thinking, oh my God, they look so scary. And like, this is so intimidating. And then I got a glimpse of someone who I later found out was Steve. And he just popped his head out the window and waved. I'm like, okay, this is going to be fun. Like, I'm actually looking forward to this. So I remember going into the room with my suitcase and just looking around the room and being so intimidated, because I was one of the last people that got there. So intimidated by these strong business people. Everyone's frowning, no one's smiling. And then I caught eyes with Rachel, who actually turned out to be the winner. And I knew Rachel because we did every stage of our audition together. So literally every single step of the audition, we did it together. And I remember the last audition, she turned around to me, she goes, you're going to get on the show. When you get on the show, smash it. And that was the last we spoke. That was the last I heard of her. So when I saw her in the boardroom 0 on the first day, I said, oh my God, yay, Rachel's here. And it kind of just gave me a sense of, and we smiled and we made contact, and that was it. We didn't speak again. So that was probably definitely one of the highlights of the entire process. Just being able to like walk into that room, back yourself, not know what anyone is like, but just know we're all going to do this activity together. That was great.
And it's interesting what you say, like, obviously you've got a mentor, you've kept in touch with people from the show.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the biggest takeaway from this, is like the networking that you were able to do?
It's funny, a lot of people say that, but I don't, do you know what? I think the biggest takeaway for me, and might be contradictory, was the memories. That was it. I think the network is great, but how do I say this? At the end of the day, you live with people that you don't know. And as much as I love everyone that was on the show, we've all kind of just drifted and gone our separate ways again. We're still in contact. But bear in mind, we only knew each other for a very short amount of time, and it was very intense. So they went from strangers to like people I share a room with, people I share a shower with, which is just the best experience ever. I always recommend people to do the show. Leave the networking aside, do it for the experience. It was just so good. And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. I would say next, yeah, networking and connections and being able to, meet people in industries I would never have met before, like if I want to buy a house, I've got Raj. And if I ever wanted to eat a pie, I've got Phil. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just so many different avenues, which is beautiful. But yeah, it was just meeting and connecting with strangers, which was really, really lovely.
Do you think it was quite important that your business was already quite formulated before you go in? Because I think some people go in and they're like, they're coming just from a career, so they don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think I had a different edge. I didn't expect it. It's a really good question, actually, because I went in thinking I'd be underexperienced. I don't have a business already. I'm starting a brand new business. I'm starting a social enterprise, for God's sake, like non-profit. I was like, yep, underdog, that's me. But then what you realize is that a lot of people who have reputations in their industry already, a lot of people who have been working for a very long time and less flexible, if that makes sense, right? Because they've been doing the same thing for years, maybe so they've been working in their industry for 10, 15, 20 years. So I think that gave me an edge and the flexibility. I didn't mind embarrassing myself. I didn't mind saying something silly. I didn't mind throwing myself in there because what reputation? I'm just building it. I'm just starting. So that was really helpful for me. Whereas other people, you could see they really struggled to, mold to that environment. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think even from what you said at the beginning, you've planned a wedding, you've done different things. So actually, although you might say I don't have a lot of experience, your mum's been running a business for, over 20, 25 years. So you think you don't have experience maybe in a corporate setting, but it doesn't, experience varies. So like you say, someone can have 10, 15 years, but it's one very small part of the thing. Do you think you would do more TV? Is it something that you liked, or is it the business that's for you?
It's a good question, actually. So I was at the National Reality TV Awards last week. No, on Friday. God, it wasn't Friday. What day is it? Friday. Was it last week? No, it was on Wednesday. God, honestly, I'm losing track of days. It was literally 2 days ago, and I said it was last week. Yeah, I was at the National Reality TV Awards on Wednesday, and I think that penny dropped. That probably no, I probably won't do any more TV. I think I'm over it. Honestly, I think, don't get me wrong. If the opportunity came, I would take it. But I'm not looking for it. I think I'm done with TV. I kind of wanted to start my business, and if my business leads to TV, that would be amazing. If I could have a TV show centered around young entrepreneurs, oh my, if I could have like a teen Dragon's Den, I will take it. But to be on TV, God, it's exhausting. It's literally long hours, long days. You have no say in how it's edited. Yeah, probably that.
It's interesting that you say a teen Dragon's Den. Why not? Why teens? So are you very much kind of like, it's the young people I want to work with? That's
Yeah.
okay.
I'm open, but I think for me, there's something about working with kids in terms of entrepreneurship. They just have a different level of like excitement, a different level of time available, like adults, and I say this from experience, work through so many insecurities, so many fears of failure, so many dependencies, I've got kids, I've got work, I've got rent to pay. Whereas with kids, they're just full of creativity. And I have this thing with working with young people because they're exposed to money, but they don't know how to make money. And I think that's my biggest thing. I remember talking to a young girl and she was like, I'll do anything to make money. I said, do you know what? That's a really dangerous statement if heard by the wrong person. Do you know what I mean? And even from our research, I've done a lot of research with like policing bodies and that kind of thing about young people, with a lot of youth workers and things like that. And a lot of crime, a lot of people who end up in prison with certain crimes, it comes from just wanting to make money, especially as a kid, wanting to being sent on errands as a kid, those little things. And I'm just like, yeah, I really want to stop it at its root, and actually give them here's money and here's how to make it, and actually bridge that gap for young people. So that's my main focus. A lot of people tell me off for not thinking about adults, but I'm like, no, kids.
No, and I think it's important because what you're saying is, like first, like you say, the excitability that they have, nothing is impossible at that age because it's like they don't have the bills and the other commitments and dependencies. But I think it reminds me of Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you read one of his books. I know which one. It wasn't The Outliers, it was something else. But he was talking about drug dealers and the boys that run the errands for them and stuff like that. And he was saying everybody has this kind of like the hip hop life is, making quick, fast money. But actually, when you break it down, the only ones that are making the money are the ones at the very, very top of the pyramid, the triangle, whatever. And he's like, actually, if you were to look at what these errand boys are making, it's like a third of minimum wage or whatever. So they're hours and hours standing on a corner selling something or doing a thing, and they're not making a lot of money. And I think it's like people not understanding money. We're not taught money at school, so that's one of the key things. So something like your programs where you're very much kind of like centered on, okay, this is the profit you make by selling this t-shirt, by being a mini influencer and going out and doing this. Maybe it's a sports thing, whatever. It's needed because they can ground it in something. It's not just like yeah. So I think that's really important. What's it called? Because I don't think you mentioned
branding it. So the tagline is your brand in it. I was trying to be cool. I think it works, but it is called branding it. So it's just like an all-round website for any young person who ever wants to start a business between 9 and 19. That's the age bracket. They just log on, create an account, do the process, and start selling. Basically, that's how it's set up. And bear in mind, there's like 9 million kids in that age bracket in the UK alone, which is crazy. And a lot of kids, like 30% of young people live in poverty. That's not something they control. That's not something they did. That's based on, their parents' living situations. And I think that's not acknowledged enough, that kids are really a product of their environment. So I'm just like, if I give you a free website and it's completely free to use, I've had a lot of backlash on this, but something I will never go back on. It's free to use. Sign up, create a product and sell it and make money. And that's literally that simple. So that's the vision. Fingers crossed this month we will be able to see it play out.
The 24th of August, what day of the week is that?
Saturday.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, aren't the GCSE results and the A-levels around about that time?
Yeah, I think it's 26, 27. I know. Honestly, after I did it, I said, you know what? We're here now. We're here. Hopefully it's not on a Saturday. But to be fair, the irony is we get a lot of younger audience. It's mostly like the 10 to 16s that we normally get. Yeah, really a lot younger than the college students, because they've obviously got other things going on.
And so in terms of, okay, this is the business and this is what's going to be launched. I get that. How are you finding it being a solopreneur? Sort of like,
Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. I think I'm so grateful to have. So I have my mentor in terms of like getting that support emotionally, financially at times as well. It's really helpful to have someone, but it is really hard. Like it's in my head. I use that phrase a lot. This is what it looks like in my head. This is what it looks like in my head, because the entire vision of what this could be right now is still in my head. And every day I do feel I'm getting one step closer to being able to actually like explain it and people to see it. But it is really hard, keeping yourself motivated, keeping yourself excited, keeping yourself up to date, making sure you get things done, sleeping at 3 a.m., waking up at 7, 8 for work. It's very overwhelming, but I'm so confident that it's going to be worth it at the end. So God, I'm just fingers crossing it that it's going to be worth it in the long run. And I do believe that. I do believe at least if there's one kid, that can turn around and be like, I started my journey here. And we call ourselves the modern day lemonade stand, which is the concept of just being the modern day version of what they were doing years ago anyway. Yeah.
And I think, and you mentioned sort of praying for The Apprentice beforehand, and I know noticed on your social media, sort of you'd put Christian, etc., whatever. How much do you think your business, your idea, and your sort of how you're going to deliver your business is guided by your faith? Because I think I see that connection, but I just want you to sort of expand for the audience a bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Christian, and I think the entirety of everything I do revolves around my faith. I always call myself a Christian entrepreneur because my faith comes before any sort of money I would ever make. Um, and that's also why it's a social enterprise as well. I think there's a beauty in social enterprises where you can make money in order to function, but also understand that things go out into the community to help people. And I think that's why I've stuck to my guns and it being a social enterprise, because it's just how I see it playing out and how I see myself being able to still connect to my faith. And also being able to, I was going to say, I don't know how religious I can go, but being able to understand there's so many people in the Bible, so many young people. The Bible even says, do not despise the days of your youth. And that's one of my core scriptures for branding it, where people, and especially young people, can actually benefit from their youth and see themselves, not just when I'm older, I want to be. What do you want to be right now? Where do you want to be right now? Yes, of course, you can't be a medical doctor at 12, but we can do things towards that. We can help you, we can support you. And yes, we're starting off with clothing. That's what we do at Branding It. But there is just so many places I want to go and so many dreams I want to help young people fulfill and find purpose within themselves at a young age. So yeah, that's kind of just how even on the show, like, it was funny. We'd always get into really deep conversations about religion and stuff like that. But I thought that was going to be a big thing for us actually coming off the show, how we all educate each other on religion and stuff like that. But all things considered, I'm just like, you know what? I want to represent God in a way where young people can walk away confidently, knowing that, they have more than one option, which is what I want to do.
Yeah, and so there's religion, and then also I think there's culture and, where you're from. So you're Nigerian, etc. So I'm assuming that coming off the show, there was quite a lot of like, hey, sis, from people, Nigerians.
What do you mean?
Like, were they kind of like, people have that thing of like how they want to be represented or how you represent them, especially if you come from a certain, yeah. So it's like, oh, positive and negative. I'm assuming you just got a lot of feedback.
It's funny. I didn't get a lot of negative feedback actually, except from them thinking they could do the show better than I did. I'm like, Auntie,
always.
Auntie, please sign up. I'll help you fill in the application. Just go. You should have sold that one better, Auntie, please. Honestly, but besides that, it was very supportive up until now, and it's so funny culturally. People are very over familiar. I don't know if that's like it. Very familiar. So they'll walk up to you on the street and expect you to know them. I'm like, I've never seen you in my life. Oh, for the show? I'm like, oh, hello. Thinking they know me from my mom's shop or something. Like, oh, I was watching you on The Apprentice. Or they say, I quote, I saw you did Lord Sugar. No, not the name of the show. So honestly, like it's so beautiful. I think I've really enjoyed it. I think that's really one of the highlights, especially with the Nigerian mom with the shop. They're all going there after every episode and telling her and debriefing it with her, which was really lovely. So yeah, I think culturally, I stand and I can say I think I represented my culture quite well. And they were very, very proud. Up until now, they're very proud. Every Nigerian wedding I go to, I get a comment, which is nice.
You're not planning these ones though, are you?
No, honestly, to be honest with you, I got an inquiry to plan a wedding last week and I was like, should I? And I said, no. I'll put it down. I said, I need to focus on my business, honestly.
I think event planning is one of the hardest businesses to be in.
It is.
You're trying to please people. You can't control the weather. You can't control the other vendors. Yeah. It's really, I did events for a little while, and I just think, it's really, really tough. So
and it's the longest timeline, isn't it? Oh my gosh, like you can plan a wedding for a year and a half. It's just, it's so much.
And then what if people don't get married? What if they decide like a month before the wedding, they're like, thank you, but we're not going to.
I'm sorry, here's my invoice.
Yeah.
So I was like, I love it. I do enjoy it. But like, no, it's too stressful event planning.
Yeah. And in terms of like what next for you, so you're gonna launch the business 24th of August 2024, and then are you kind of obviously going to give yourself some time for the business to develop, but do you already have other things planned? Have you got other ideas?
Yes. Ideally, so this workshop is kind of it's a workshop for the kids, a focus group for me, but proof of concept for our investors. So there's quite a few, you know, things going on in it. The aim is that by the end of it, their businesses will be launched. So then I'll be able to like put the website out to the world, basically, also in the UK. Let me start there. Start from the UK. And put it out to other kids in the UK who want to be a part of it. We've got 2 schools already signed up that we're going to be going to talk to in the new year. So I think I'm just planning for an explosion. I think I always hesitate to say that because, you know, sometimes in business it's like, oh, humble, humility. But no, I think I'm planning for it to be big. I'm planning for an influx of young people to kind of sign up and get involved. I'm planning for investors and everything else. So I think, you know, what's that phrase? Hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of thing. I think I'm just hoping and praying that it's going to get the attention it needs. I mean, the funny thing is, I don't actually ever need to say too much. When the young people hear I get to make money and it doesn't cost my parents anything, they're straight in. So that's never really the problem. I think the hardest thing is getting buy-in from parents, actually, which is I never thought was going to be a thing. But trying to get parents to buy into the idea and understand the concept is probably a little bit harder. But that being said, I'm literally going to, from the 25th of August, I'm going to branding it written on my forehead, literally nonstop. Let's go. Let's see what happens. Fingers crossed I'll be able to do it full time by next year. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, I struggle to slow down. So this is going to be an interesting year.
Are you still with the company that you were with when you were on The Apprentice, the one where you got permission from the COO to take some time off?
No, I left there. Oh my gosh, yeah. So I left that company last year, November. I am working in project management still, but it's just something I'm doing just to keep myself tied up. But they should not watch this. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. But it is true. I'm just doing it to kind of keep myself ticking while I work on my business on weekends or off hours, whatever it is.
That's exactly what a job is for, though. A job is for you to, yeah. So I don't think anybody minds.
It's so funny because people hesitate to say that. You know what I mean? Like, even I hesitated to say it. But it's just habit, I guess, really. I left that company in November, took some time off just to enjoy the apprentice and the process. You know, it was a lot. It took a lot out of me. I hadn't said, but so it was crazy. Last year, April, when I found out I got on the show, started planning, and then 10 days before I left, my dad passed away. So I had to deal with that. Thank you. So I had to deal with that. Still went on the show because I wasn't going to do it, but my family were like, do it. You've got this far. You know, that's what dad would have wanted, which is true. So I did it anyway. So obviously I had to come back, grieve. That was the whole thing as well. And then I left the company. I just said, you know what? I've worked so hard for this. I just want to enjoy it. So about 4 or 5 months, I just did nothing. Just worked on my business, did nothing 9 to 5 wise, just built my business, enjoyed the apprentice, took every opportunity it came with, and then decided to go back into work again, which is something I've only been doing a few months now, actually, and then working on my business as well. So kind of just an unorthodox process, but just what I want. I want to be able to look back and say, do you know what? I enjoyed it. It was worth it. Do you know what I mean?
And I think, especially if you're doing things by yourself, you know, if you're a solopreneur, your well-being, your mental well-being is so important. And I think that's the bit that we all forget because you're wearing so many hats. It's very easy to be like, oh, okay, well, I'm not working. But actually you are because you're planning, you're this, you're that. It's a lot of things. I'm glad you did decide to go in because I think you're right. It's like we all grieve differently. And I think in a way, like, okay, him having been part of the process of you applying, etc., then do you know what I mean? It was like, at least it was like one thing that you'd shared before you passed. So at least then you had that. So I'm glad you did do that because I think it would have been a bit, I think you might have regretted it if you'd said no.
So it was crazy because I was on the verge of saying, I told my family, when they all said they were flying out because he was buried in Nigeria, when they all said they were flying out, I'm like, well, if everyone's going, I can't not be the only one. But my family were like, no, you have to do it. And I'm glad I did because I think talking to my mom, it really gave her something to look forward to, something else to think about as well. And then I had to kind of breathe in between the show. It was crazy. There was days we were filming and I would literally lock myself in a room and cry for like 10 minutes. And then we're back on set. So as soon as I came out, went back into therapy. It was like never doing that again. Amazing experience. Went straight back into therapy because I just knew I needed it. Oh my gosh, yeah, very very full on, yeah.
No, that's good. And I think that's the other thing, like whether it's a mentor, a therapist, a coach, I do feel, especially when you're doing things by yourself, you need that support system, that mental, psychological support system, emotional. We don't have it. And it's asking a lot of partners and parents and family and friends because, you know, they're not as committed to the business as you are, you know what I mean? So that, you know, so they can't listen to you and your anxieties and your worries, whereas that's what you're paying for. Yeah, yes. I'm glad you did that. Are you a physical therapist person? Because there's a lot of virtual therapy now. A lot of people do a lot of virtual.
I've got virtual. I've had one physical, and I didn't enjoy it as much as the virtual because I'm in my bed. Yeah, I'm like cozy up in my bed, just popping on my iPad screen, and I just really enjoy. I love therapy. I recommend it to everyone. If you can find a good therapist, you're good, you're locked in. Because I knew I needed it. It was exactly what I needed at that point in time to just have a trusted, safe space that I could just talk. And as you said, no one else sees the business like you do. And, you know, at that point last year, the show hadn't aired, but I knew obviously the entire process. So I knew I got fired week 10. I knew it was unfair. And I can say that now because my contract has expired. I knew it was unfair. I knew that, you know, I deserved to be in there longer. So I just felt like I had the world to prove before the show even aired. I just felt like I'm in a lot of business and it's going to take over the world. And by the time the show comes out, no one's going to care, you know, and it's just all this pressure I put on myself to just be really successful. And I'm so glad that I went to therapy because it kind of helped me conceptualize everything that was going on in my life and not just this solo event of someone saying you're fired, you know, that was really helpful.
And I think also, I mean, I've worked in TV on the other side, so I've done sort of like content production and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is for a TV show, so it's not really about being just or being fair. It's like this makes a good episode. You know, they'll edit it purposefully to be like this is the result that we want, you know, etc. A lot of the time, we already knew who we wanted in our top 4 because it would be the most diversity, for example. It would give us the most storylines, except, you know, whatever. Sometimes we let people go because we're like, yeah, we've exhausted that storyline. So I can totally understand how you'd come out of it being like, yeah, shouldn't have gone that week. I did have a few more weeks left in me, but it's TV, so it
really is. Honestly, when you realize that, you relax a little bit because at first it's very like got to prove myself. You realize this is an entertainment show. Honestly, the more entertaining you are, the longer you last at the end of the day. that's the reality of it, honestly. As long as you can present well in the boardroom and entertain, you are like prime for them to pick you.
Were you one of the youngest?
Yeah. So it was, I think I was the third youngest. There was 23, 24, and I was 25 at the time. Yeah, okay. 25. And then it jumped up to like 30 onwards.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Definitely one of the young. I didn't feel like one of the youngest, which is really weird, but I was one of the youngest. I think it's just a presenting thing. You know, you're just always trying to look your best and present well. You forget that you're only a baby as
well. When you said you had to get your wardrobe together, like, you know, you had to get everything together, and obviously Black women, we have to get our hair sorted and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit more. So what did you go for? Like in your head, were you like, I need to power dress this? What did you decide?
It was one of the best parts, actually, shopping, because it was the only time I could come in with a £500 delivery and my mum's not going to shout. It was brilliant. I loved it. But I think for me, it was like outfit-wise, I just wanted to feel good. I didn't want to think about what I looked like. Like, I didn't want to think, oh my God, what does this look like on camera? I literally picked outfits that weren't too tight, that I could feel comfortable in, that I would wear in a normal day at home kind of thing. And beauty-wise, that was the hardest thing because I wanted to do braids. There's never been braids on the show. And I was like, I want to be the first person. Yeah, no one's ever had braids on the show in 18. Well, no one's ever had braids. It's not been that many Black women to have braids anyway, but no one has actually had any. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put some braids. And then they're like, oh, unfortunately, you know, unless you can maintain them yourself. And I can't do my own hair. So I was really upset and I couldn't do braids because if you were to get a stylist to come in, then you'd be paying them like £100 a visit, which is crazy. And obviously they filmed, so behind the scenes, a little bit behind the scenes, they filmed the ending, the cab scene, months before the show. So they film you exited in the taxi way before the show even starts filming. So obviously, whatever you look like then is what you have to look like when the show's on, because you can't, your hair can't have changed in that last scene. So they're like, unless you can afford to do the braids yourself and pay £100 for someone to redo my braids every time, I was like, not doing that. So I literally just bought 3 wigs, 3 black identical wigs, and kept it simple. Because I was like, I'm not going to do anything too expensive. And that was the best decision I made. It was honestly, yeah, I'm so glad I did that. But yeah,
Well,
I was
now we
doing.
know why. Now we know why there weren't braids on before, because everybody probably had the same conversation in their
Exactly.
heads around. Yeah, I will
Exactly.
not do it.
Unless someone
Yeah.
goes in, and I think that day I will stand up and clap. We get a black female hairstylist on there with a black hairstyling business, doing her hair every day. That and that only. Honestly, I will stand up and clap for her. I'll vote for her. 100%.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. So, how long was it all together for the 10 weeks? Was it actually 10 weeks, or
No, so it was
because
like,
normally it's like you do a week in like 2 days
yeah,
shooting or something? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's like two tasks a week, and then a down day. So you get like 3 days for a task, a down day, which is where you do nothing, not like literally just walk around the house, and then 3 days again for a task. So even we got caught up in calling it week, but it was the same week. But honestly, it was crazy. So the whole thing itself was maybe about 2 months of filming. I'm trying to remember why. Yes, so it was because of like all the breaks. There was some days Lord Sugar couldn't film, so that we had 2 extra down days, or we traveled one day and then filmed the day after, that kind of thing. So it was about 2 months in total. April, I got back like first week in April, May, June. Yeah, about June we got back. Yeah. So it was very, very intense, back to back to back to back. Harry.
So after you've done the kids bit, like, because I can see what Tim's saying. Actually, there will come a point where you're like, okay, this no longer serves. I can sell my own social enterprise and just be a chairperson. After that, what group do you think you'd do next? Do you think it would be black women? Do you think, you know what I mean? Is there a group that you'd be like, actually, this would make a lot of sense for me to maybe do that when I'm older?
I think students, like young adults. I think I'm going to split my way up in age and stuff. It
So
depends
like
where I am, to be
graduates.
fair.
So like graduates,
Yes.
just like first, second job.
Yeah, exactly. That what next phase.
Yeah.
I think is really, really important. Actually, my little sister went through that phase and actually did a little documentary about it. And I think that was very interesting and eye-opening for me to also understand that there is so much confusion after university or after education in any capacity, where it's like, what do I do now? What's next? What job should I do? And I do believe there's like this weird, like depressive stage after uni when you're just like trying to figure life out. You're thrown into this big wide world. There's no £9,000 coming in your account anymore, to help you survive. So I think young people, like young students, is probably my next. But you know what? I think right now I'm probably going to be occupied with this for a while, because there's so many avenues. Yeah, easily. So many industries. We want to have like pop-up shops, where they can have their own, pop-up restaurants if they want to be a chef, and they can have their own pop-up anything, that kind of thing. I want to get into kids who want to sell music, sell their beats and that kind of thing. So it's endless possibilities. Yeah.
Well, you started off by saying like you've done a couple of short films and stuff like that. So I do wonder if you'd end up on the other end of the camera, sort of, doing.
I did that first. I was acting, and then I used to act. I used to do theatre, and then I got behind the camera. I've been having conversations about getting back into acting, but do you know what?
Time.
I need to be so focused. Literally, yeah. I've been having a few conversations. There's so many industries, especially coming up the Apprentice. People, have so many offers for you in so many different places. Oh, that looks interesting. Oh, that looks interesting. But I'm having to stay so focused on, what I went in with and stick to it and see it through. And at the end of the day, the world always keeps turning. So these opportunities aren't going to end. There's always going to be something to do somewhere. So I'm just kind of trying to keep my head screwed on for now. But you might see me planning a wedding next week. I don't know. I can't make any promises.
No, I think so. And what's nice for us is that we're seeing you at the beginning of the journey. So actually, it would be really good to know where, come back in a few years and be like, because you will be, I think you'll have like completely pivoted where you're at. So it's like this business, even the way the business looks, because you talk about it being a website, but I see it more as a platform. So I think it's interesting, like even how you describe it. I think it's more of a platform. And if it's a platform that's linked to financial education, business education for young people, that's really like a powerful platform. So I think even how you're just framing it will change. And so it'll be interesting to see where
that's why I was really excited to come on, actually, because I think I love being able to talk about this stage with this level of excitement and this level of curiosity as to what it's going to work out, how it's going to work out, I should say. Because as you said, in a few years, it could look completely different, and I could look completely different in it, and I think that's kind of how I look forward to seeing how it's going to plan out. I think my goal is to always be able to pass it off to my nephews to manage. That's the goal long term. I've got 2, 16 and 15 and 14, and I would love for them to kind of like be the next CEOs of the companies. That's kind of my next step, I know, in terms of management, but you just never know. Just never know.
Make it a family business. So I guess, with your mum shop and everything, so you're used to that sort of family business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. I look forward to seeing where it goes, and we will follow you obviously on all of the social medias and stuff. And
thank you. Vice versa.
How do people find you, so that we're really clear, especially parents? Because I think you're right. It's parents of the harder sell, because they're like, how do they find you?
So I said I was talking about the socials again. I'm branding it. God. Always in branding it mode. I never forget. I never leave that moment. I was going to put a top on today. I was going to put my branding it t-shirt. I was like, no, just take a break. Honestly, I have like a whole wardrobe of branding it merch. And I was just like, put it down, wear clothes. So social media, it's Foluso Falade. That's FOLUSO FALADE. Of course, everything really: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't use Twitter; too toxic for me personally. So I use those 3 platforms, and then it's just Foluso Falade at hotmail.com for any emails, inquiries, or anything at all. And I get a lot of emails from parents saying, "I'd love you to mentor my kids," which would be great. But the platform does that really well. I'm going to call it a platform just because you called it a platform.
It's a platform. I think it's a platform. And I think it makes a difference. Like, it is a platform because it's sort of like, especially because it's a social enterprise. So even that by itself is like it's changing and challenging behaviors. And, so actually it'll be 100%. Interesting. And I look forward to watching some of their journeys as well. Because like you say, it could start off with a t-shirt. Before you know it, it's a brand. And we're all like, we all like follow. We're all wearing it. We don't even know that it started here. So you you really don't know where it's going to end up. But I'm excited about it. Like the concept. I think it's interesting because I think the fear for a lot of Black people going on is that they will be typecast, and especially women. They're like, oh, I'm going to be the angry Black woman. That's difficult to get on with, especially because Omarosa in the American one was one of the first Black women on there, and she was just a nightmare. So it was, I think it's that. So I think it was a brave decision for you to want to do it. I think because you just don't know, and you've got no control over you as a brand. I think that's really good. And do you think in terms of accelerating your entrepreneurial journey, this is something that you would advise people to do, or do you think it worked for you because you'd already had it in your mind?
It's a funny one. I think it depends what industry you're trying to get into. I think it's definitely good for credibility for everyone. There isn't an email or a door I can't knock on and say, "Hi, I'm Foluso from the Apprentice." Do you know what I mean? They can just Google you and find out who you are, which is brilliant. Especially from a business perspective. But in terms of acceleration, it's still you. It's still all on you. Unless you win the show, nothing else really happens for you unless you make it happen. People always ask me, "You still in contact with Lord Sugar?" No. Once you get fired, unless he reaches out, and I do know that there has been previous years of people who have actually gone into partnership with him that didn't win. So that's very much his decision. But outside of that, that's it. You're throwing it back into the wild to figure it out, really.
Yeah, and also it's not to say that the person who is the hiring person is the right match for you in terms of your business long term. So it's like everybody's like, you're in touch. But actually the fact that you kept in touch with Tim is probably someone who has teenagers or had teenagers. I think his kids are slightly older now. But, has been through that as a parent. So gets the kind of, that's a much more important connection than it would be in my mind.
100%. I think I think that's the reality of it. You know, you go on the show, you want the partnership, you want the business, but you also have got to remember, and I say this as someone who hasn't started a business yet, but you've got to remember, is this person the right person for me? And I remember thinking that with Lord Sugar at some point. So though he's absolutely incredible, so reputable, you know, he's done amazing things. But at the end of the day, I've got to also make sure that you're the best suit for my business and where I want to go. Which is why, you know, when it didn't work out, I was disappointed. But I realized it just wasn't meant to be. And as you said, you know, Tim is a chair on a school for a board of a school. Like, that's the environment I need to be in. And I remember even when the series finished, Tim pulled me aside at the final and he was like, you know, as a father of a Black daughter, I'm so proud of you. And I think that moment, just those kind of things, I'm like, that's what I need. I need this kind of, you know, support, someone who sees me. So yeah, those kind of moments were key.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's credibility and it's visibility and it's a proof of concept as well. It's like, this works. So you've done all of that. So well done. And like I say, we will be following up and we will be checking in on you. And just thank you.
Please do.
Thank you for taking this time. It's a Friday.